The eighth commandment, and you shall not steal. There'll be two videos about the eighth commandment, and this one is the first one, and the next one is entitled God's Work Ethic. God commands, don't steal. Every person in the whole world knows this. They know that stealing is wrong. It's an absolute truth. People deny this and say that there's no absolute truth about sexual and other kind of topics. And they'll say this. They'll say, whatever you want to do is fine. It's okay. Do whatever you want. Just go ahead. And they'll say, you can take things if you want to, but if you try to steal something from them, they are angry at you. Why'd you do that? Why'd you take my things? All people that are born know that there is a law from God. That's in their hearts. That's how they know. God created us, and He put it in our heart. We're in His image. The eighth commandment, it's a spiritual law that is in every person's heart. It's more clearly in people's hearts than any other law in any culture in the whole world. People, across the world, they will break the second commandment, that says don't worship idols, no idolatry. And people will break this. They don't have a lot of concern about this. But stealing, oh no, they say this is wrong. And the cultures, they're against it. The eighth commandment makes sense. The reason is because God's established in our heart that we have the right to own things, to personal property. If we take something that belongs to another person, it is wrong. That's stealing from them. And people have the right to personal property and to own things and to be able to keep their own things. That's why the eighth commandment makes sense. If, and this is not true for us, but if all people were required to own all things in common, and if a person took something, well, would that person be stealing? No, he wouldn't. The reason is because the person owned the things the same as everybody else did, shared in ownership. Now, we know that we don't have that kind of system set up here in America, but I'm just saying that if we did, then there would be no such thing as stealing, and we would have never heard of the eighth commandment, because what would it be for? Now, there are some economic systems, that support socialism. And that's where the group as a whole, the community, is ordered that they are to share all things in common. And that's socialism. And of course, that's wrong. The reason is because it denies our God-given right to personal property. We see people out there, politicians and some professing Christians who say that they believe that wealth is evil, and that it's not the best way for Christians to live. We should force the wealthy people to share their things, their money with poor people. Well, let me ask you, is that right? Well, the eighth commandment does not support that perspective. Wealth can have good and positive effects. There are so many great men in the Bible that were wealthy. Abraham. Another example is Joseph of Arimathea. Question, is having wealth in itself sin? No, it's not. The problem with money is when people are holding on to money and putting their hope into it, trusting in their money instead of depending on God, and that's wrong. But wealth in itself is not sin. Some people out there, people trust in money. They're guilty of doing this. Poor people, the same as rich people, they do the same thing. They trust in money. Now, how do we apply all this to our Christian life? Well, people have no right to take things that belong to another person. You have no right. That's stealing. That's stealing, and it's sin. It's important for us to understand what God's Word says about following our culture. We can break the eighth commandment, and many times we'll think we're doing the right thing. We're doing God's will, and we're not. We're way off, so be careful. You need to study God's word and his explaining about what is right and what is wrong, so we would know best what to do. Don't follow the culture and what it says. That's breaking the law many times. There are some politicians, there are people in the government, and they will propose, that there will be a tax on people who are more wealthy than the rest of the people. And that flows down into our culture, and people will think that's right. Yeah, you need to help the poor people do that. No, that's wrong. The Eighth Commandment doesn't support doing that. That's stealing from rich people. Coram Deo.